Welcome to this episode of Paradise Talks. I'm Emma Bartholomew. When you think of sexy brands, or even products that would be sexy to sell, let's say, life insurance probably wouldn't be that high on the list. Beyond being presumed maybe dry or dull, there's the whole taboo around the subject of death, and a reluctance for us as consumers to face up to our own mortality and think about what happens to our loved ones after we've gone. So today, we're looking forward to an open and candid chat with a guest who represents a life insurance brand that is so far from boring or corporate that it might just make you sit up and listen. Banishing taboos, opening up the conversation around death and what happens to the people we love after we're gone, and doing it all in the cleverest of irreverent and appealing ways is the brand DeadHappy. And joining me to tell us how genius branding is done when it comes to the unspeakable is DeadHappy's head of brand, Eddy Edwards. Welcome, Eddy, to Paradise Talks.
Hi, Emma. Good to meet you. Thank you for that very kind intro. I'm not sure about genius branding, but we're certainly enjoying it. But thank you.
Well, the pressure is on you, Eddy, to convince us of that genius branding, but I don't think you're going to have to work very hard from what I've seen. So let's start off with maybe you telling us a little bit about what DeadHappy is.
Okay, so the simplest answer to that is at the moment, DeadHappy is predominantly a life insurance business. So we sell life insurance. I think we don't want to be just a life insurance business. We're on an investment path, so we have to prove that we can be profitable as a life insurance business, which we're doing right now. In fact, we're in the next round of investment as we speak, and that should be completed in the next few days. So it's all going really, really well and on track. But at the moment, the business is a life insurance business. Eventually, we will be a death services brand, although we're not afraid of the word death, but we prefer to call it afterlife planning or death planning. Because it's all about planning for anything you want to happen after you die, which can go off in a myriad of different products, services, and experiences. But at the moment, DeadHappy, really, we do offer wills, but predominantly we're a life insurance business.
Okay. And I can see already that there's so many little nuances and different linguistic approaches to this whole business that I'm guessing describing DeadHappy as a brand might also be a slightly nuanced affair. How would you describe DeadHappy as a brand?
I think we'd all describe it slightly differently. You're right, nuance is definitely an issue, but we're a disruptive brand without a doubt. Within the life insurance space, we know that it's incredibly traditional and antiquated, so we are a disruptor. I think something that we're communicating more and more, and certainly going into Q1 of next year, we're going to be basing our campaigns around, is the fact that we're not just a brand. We're not just a kind of a coat, a funny little irreverent brand attacking traditional through funny little videos and things. That actually our product is innovative as well. So we've redesigned the whole life insurance product. We've changed the question set. We've made it a lot easier and quicker to apply. It's just making it affordable and accessible, but the product is innovative as well. So it's not just about applying a brand or a behavior or a tone of voice to an existing product. It's a blend of the two.
Okay. And so I think you've already started to touch upon this in what you've just said, but was there a gap in the establishing of what was essentially at the beginning a life insurance company and the developing of the brand around that? Or were those two things kind of born together? Because I see DeadHappy as very much a personality-driven brand and company. That seems to be within your DNA. So was that kind of at the foundation stage, or did the idea for the business come and then the brand kind of built up around it?
Yeah, that's quite perceptive, Emma. But weirdly enough, it was. So to touch on this is probably to explain that there are two founders. One of them, a guy called Andy Knott, actually loved the name DeadHappy probably 10, 12 years ago. He just fell in love with this term DeadHappy, probably coming from maybe Liverpool or the North in terms of dead good. And he protected the URL and thought, he's a serial entrepreneur. He ran an ad agency and a video games company. And he thought, there's something in this. And I'm not sure it was what it would be. But a couple of years after that, he tried to get life insurance and realized how ridiculously painful the process was, how archaic it was, and really struggled to actually get life insurance apart from anything else. And that's where the seed was born, in terms of a creative mind, an entrepreneur marrying an opportunity with a seed of a thought that he already had. And then he was introduced or met a guy called Phil Zeidler, who is from the insurance industry, so an entrepreneur within the insurance industry. And when they got together, they realized they had something special and something that could be truly disruptive. And Andy, being a creative brain, created a pitch deck really for investment. And that's really where the brand was born, because he was starting to create ads, a tone of voice. He was a logo, the basics of a brand, right the way through to tone of voice. So you're absolutely right. Right from the beginning, brand and communication and an emotional connection was born at the same time as these two guys going out and seeking investment. So it was right. Brand was really evident and the seed right from the beginning of the business. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
I love that birth of the brand story, because that's obviously truly where disruptive brands come into any space, is the frustration of what exists beforehand, and then the aspiration to create something to disrupt that space and obviously make things better. And some of your goals as a brand are clearly, and really importantly, I think, as a consumer from my side, are around the core principle of changing attitudes to death, if that doesn't sound too grand. How do you approach that when it comes to reaching an audience who may not even realize or want to admit that this is something that they need to engage with? Slightly tricky waters sometimes, I guess.
It can be. The biggest problem is people misinterpret what we're trying to do. I think you're absolutely right about, we've got a purpose, which is changing attitudes to death. And it does sound a bit grand, if I'm honest. I mean, we all kind of accept that for a life insurance business to be talking about changing attitudes to death. But again, hopefully in a few years' time, well, certainly sooner than that, we're going to be way more than just life insurance. And we can touch on all sorts of amazing things you can do, admittedly preparing for what happens after you die. But we're not grief counselors. It's not all about the point of death. It's not all about funeral planning. It's about the opportunities that arise after you die, where you can make other people's lives a lot better. And you can leave things that you really want to leave to while you're living, that you've got greater peace of mind, or the things that just are joyful, that are funny, that you can actually leave people with a smile on the face. But I think the misinterpretation comes when people think that we're being irreverent or too irreverent or disrespectful to death itself. And actually people that have lost loved ones, or certainly through the pandemic, it's put a different framing on us and our funny, if you like, advertising, that people think that we're in some way being disrespectful to people who have gone through any experience of death. And actually it's not about that at all. It's about empowering people to do what they want to do, and what they want to be triggered and actioned after they die. So it's that misinterpretation. We've even had people on Facebook saying that they telling us to go to places we don't really want to go, because they don't want health insurance. So people conflate lots of different things. They think we're funeral planners or health insurance, and actually it really is about empowering people. And that's what we feel really passionately about this. But unfortunately, in our society, people worry very much about death and shy away from talking about death. So, but the next generations coming through seem to be much more open about it. Other societies are much more open about it. There are plenty of podcasts around now. So it's getting it's much easier to talk about death in certain spheres, but a lot of people just think it's out of order and that we're being disrespectful. But we kind of can't worry about that. We've got much bigger aspirations to help change the narrative. But there is a lot of misinterpretation, I think. I don't know if that answers your question, Emma.
Oh, it absolutely does. And you mentioned some really interesting and I think important things to face up to, which is the fact that it can be a delicate subject. But I think if you're bringing authenticity of purpose to it, then at some point the conversation slightly changes, and I think that's the kind of interesting cultural change maybe that we will hopefully start coming towards as a society. But you also mentioned a very important element in what you've just said, which is the next generation. And yes, I'm sorry to hear that you've had those kind of encounters on Facebook, but I guess we all face those
we don't mind.
At some point. And I mean, as I said, if you're bringing authenticity, then you can always face those kind of criticisms or those comments. But thinking about that next gen audience, how do you go about keeping their attention in this era that we find ourselves in, which is literally zero attention span, and you're competing as a brand with everything from cat videos to fake news on literally anything that has a screen or a reflective surface? I mean, how do you go about keeping that attention?
I think that the main thing is, as simple as it sounds, is humour. We're empathizing it in terms of a tone of voice, of being frustrated with things that are a bit shit. I'm allowed to say that on your podcast.
You're totally allowed to say that. Yeah.
The world is full of frustrations. We want things, and we want things to be uncomplicated and to be authentic and to be honest. So we're trying to be as honest as we possibly can, to break down taboos, to break down barriers, and you know what, have a bit of fun. And we're not obsessed with fun, but just bringing some humor to this, some lightheartedness. We're talking about planning. We're talking about planning for things that you want to happen. There's an element of admin to it, but really it's about empowering you to get what you want ultimately. And so, but the overlay of humor is massive for us, and that seems to be what's getting the cut through. We do some very straightforward marketing. We do some straightforward messaging, some very kind of obvious call to actions, but it's always those moments of humor where you're not actually selling very much are the moments where we get the greatest engagement. And then from a marketing point of view, then we've got something to work on and push people through the funnel to get all kind of marketing on in there. But it's humor. Humor is a massive, massive part of our values and our DNA.
Yeah, and you've just said it again there, DNA. It seems to be so much at the core of the personality of the brand. And I think for me, that humor, that huge part of your approach being the irreverent humor, which I'm a big fan of. I mean, I know that irreverent humor could, as you said, seem inappropriate at times around this subject, but it's injected so cleverly and so naturally into the brand voice and your content. And I'm sure that a lot of our listeners would agree with your perception that traditional life insurance is shit, to put it bluntly. And I honestly feel like they will be glad that you're trying to redesign that space in some way. But you just mentioned there the kind of balancing of maybe the serious messaging sitting alongside that irreverent humor. Is that a delicate balancing act, or is it always very clear where you want to inject that personality and where, as you said, you just got your very clear call to action, much more straightforward messaging? Is that always an obvious choice?
It's really tricky. So you're right in as much. So there's loads of serious. We could spend ages talking about why traditional life insurance is shit, but in a nutshell, it's not fit for purpose. And what I mean by that is most people sign up to what they call a level term life insurance, which means it's 20 or 25 years, and they calculate the price of that based on guessing that your health will be a certain state over those 25 years, which means you're front paying a lot of that money. It also means that if you change, they're totally inflexible. So if your life changes, i.e. you have a family or you move to a bigger house and you need greater insurance, what happens is you cancel that insurance policy and you start a new one, and the cycle continues that you're overpaying in the first few years. And it's a bit thick, really. So we don't do it with car insurance. We don't do it with most other insurances. Nearly all other insurances you can change year on year. But with life insurance, you're stuck. It's fixed. So and I can give you loads of other examples. You know, but we don't want to come across as insincere. We've got these serious messages, but we don't want to scare people. We can talk about protection gap stats. You know, there are 8 million people that don't have protection that probably should, i.e. mortgage owners or parents. There are 116 children that lose a parent every day that don't have protection. So there's loads of serious stuff in here, and we do release some of those stats, and we do because they underpin our product and the reason why there's an opportunity and reason why we think we're helping people, because this is about wanting life insurance, not necessarily just needing it. But getting stuck in that quagmire of serious and fearful stats is a tricky balance when we're trying to be irreverent and we're trying to bring some humor to it. So it is a tricky blend. We do have to be careful. I think we have to be careful in the sense of not coming across as insincere and authentic. That's the problem, really, and that's the balance with some of the comms.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And thinking about coming into a space that desperately needs disrupting, as you've so perfectly just described, an imperfect system that desperately needs changing. Have you come across much? Let's be 2021 about it and call them haters. Industry, other companies, other long-established companies who are very traditional and sticking with the kind of status quo. Is that something that happens, or is it not that kind of industry? Is there not backbiting? I'm not so familiar with the insurance world.
No, you will always get the insurance insiders trying to rubbish anything, especially when you're innovating the product.
Yeah.
It's very easy to rubbish our personality and our humour because they'll just say that we're being a bit stupid or insensitive. We don't care. We don't care at all about the industry having a pop. Even people say, for example, you get obviously about Facebook advertising, you can get direct feedback from your Facebook ads, and we get a lot of people that hate us. In fact, we've got these two animated characters that I'm sure you're aware of, and we'll probably talk about in a bit.
Yeah, we will.
Mick and Tal, and the reason why we've kind of created these characters is because they're at arm's length to a certain extent. They're representing our potential customers. Mick thinks we're great, and Terry hates us. He thinks we're cowboys. He'd rather go with a traditional, trusted, old school kind of company. And it allows us to have that debate at arm's length. But we do plenty of comms and advertising that really winds people up. They hate the fact that we're called DeadHappy. We have a tagline which is life insurance to die for. We've had a campaign called Please Die Responsibly. And that's really tricky in a pandemic or through a pandemic to talk in those terms without winding some people up. I mean, some people think that we actually created the brand and the business during the pandemic to take advantage of it, which is nuts. But we get loads of haters. We get a lot of people piling in and telling us very, very, very candidly what to do with ourselves. But what happens then, Emma, is that people do a lot of the work for us because we've got more fans in that respect than we have haters, and they come onto Facebook and start defending us. They're either customers that have already got a plan with us, or they like the fact that we're trying to disrupt. They pile in, people pile back, and we end up with just a stream. I mean, some of our ads have hundreds and hundreds of engagements, likes or comments. We've got, for a life insurance business, to get 500 comments on a Facebook ad is almost unheard of. We don't mind if they're haters or not. We can justify certain product issues if they have that. But really, we do interject to a certain extent here and there and keep that conversation flowing, but we're not afraid of any of that. But there is plenty of hate. Somebody said to me recently, don't worry about pissing people off. It's just make sure you piss off the right kind of people. And we don't mind. This industry is big enough to cope with DeadHappy coming along. And if we only take a small percentage of people that come with us on this journey, we'll be very, very happy. So we don't mind. In fact, we like it. And let's be honest, we'll probably provoke some of that hate because it provokes debate. And if we want to change attitudes to death, we can't be afraid of the haters. We just can't.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're not afraid of the conversation in the first place, then you certainly can't be afraid of the other people already living in that space. But yeah,
this is where taboos come from, isn't it? And
yeah.
It's fear. It's fear of talking about something. So you stick your head back in. We don't want things to be morbid and scary and fearful, but we've got to get people talking about this. If they're going to plan properly and share even, then we've got to get people talking about it on a more kind of open level, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And on a thematic level, that is keeping the conversation going, which is healthy for all of us. But on a brand level, I know I used the word before, but it is kind of genius because it's all engagement. And as you say, there will be some haters in that engagement, but it's actually just pushing your fans further towards the surface, which is fantastic. I wanted to talk about specifically one of the services that you offer. I'm not sure if this is a current service or something that you're planning for the near future. But it's just I thought it was a really nice example of something that would have the potential to sound scary and maybe something we wouldn't want to face up to as consumers and everyday Joe Blogs members of the public. But it's really important, and that is your death wish. Could you explain to our audience what the DeadHappy death wish concept is and maybe how you go about marketing that?
Right. Okay. So death wishes are, I'd say it's probably the most exciting part from a brand person, a marketing person, an ad person, creating emotional connections. Death wishes are probably the most exciting part of this business, certainly for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I would say it's probably shared by everybody from the tech guys to the founders to everybody. And that is because essentially a death wish is just anything you want to happen when you die. And at the moment, if you create a will, you can have expressions of wishes. So you can give all your money away, anything you like. But most people don't put emotional things in. They don't put messages to loved ones. They don't leave videos. So they don't leave specific wishes for, other than very, very close friends and family. It doesn't spread much further than that. Death wishes are our way of saying whatever you want to do, whatever you want to activate when you die, you can do that through DeadHappy. So anything I could mention. I mean, eventually we are doing wills, but death wishes aren't integrated into the wills product at the moment. But death wishes are central to everything. They're not just a feature or a bolt-on. Eventually, it will be create a death wish and then spin it into life insurance, spin it into a will, put it into trust, protect it, bind it, make it contractual. But death wishes are absolutely, this isn't in no way a negative. This isn't about some kind of Charles Bronson daft stuff. This isn't about being violent or self-annihilation. This is about really controlling what you want to happen when you die. So you create a death wish, and at the moment you can create death wishes that help you calculate how much life insurance you need, or you just write expressions of wishes. And when you die, that will be passed on, and whoever is in charge of that can choose whether they activate those wishes. But really, to answer your question, Emma, it's not a feature, it's not a bolt-on, it's not a little aspect. Actually, this is going to be central to everything we do, and we're calling them death wishes, and it's incredibly exciting. But not just from an emotional point of view, not just from helping people to decide what they want to do, but also from a commercial aspect. The possibilities of bolting on experiences as commodities to a certain extent for life insurance, or to just buy. We've got this thing in our minds, Death Wish Live, which is, live them while you're still alive. If you have this amazing idea and you want to send your friends to Vegas for a week when you die, well, you might want to do that when you're still alive. You might go through it. It might become a bucket list thing rather than just after death. So death wishes, central to everything, massively exciting, and not just a feature. They're huge for us.
Well, I think, honestly, the concept to my mind, in a kind of humanitarian, humane way, is really beautiful. I think it's really important. And I guess it also taps into a feeling that a lot of us may have faced up to over the last 18 months, which is, the brevity of life and how those bucket lists, we need to get a move on. We need to pull our fingers out and get on with that stuff. So from a commercial point of view, I think it's brilliant. It's just, as you said, if you start with the death wish, which is literally just the basics of what do you want to happen when you die, that can be in terms of who do you need to look after, who do you want to spend more time with before you go. And I think it's I think it's brilliant.
It's exactly, Emma. That's really good. I'm glad you said that. It's not the point is about death services or afterlife plan. The reason why we call it afterlife planning is because it's almost like your death triggers so many things for other people. So it's almost like your end is the beginning of so many other things. But you're right. In the process of weighing up what you want to happen when you die and what you want other people to experience, actually your brain, your mindset will get into another space, which could be, hang on a minute, why can't I do that now? Why can't I
Yeah.
do that with my children now? Why can't I do that with my wife or girlfriend or husband? Why, once you're into the planning phase, it can be funny. What do I want my funeral to be? What do I want to be played? What do I want people to wear? They're the obvious things, but this can be joyful. It can be celebratory, and it can impact how you feel about your own life, as well as impacting other people and giving them more after you die, rather than just. I know it sounds a bit of a cliche, but giving them more rather than less.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think if we can get to that mindset change, we all might get a bit more balance in the way that we think about our future, because our future comes upon us far too quickly in most cases, and before we know it, it's here, whether that's getting older or getting closer to the end of our life. But I guess sometimes it is difficult to um, encourage people to think about specifically the time after we've gone. And in terms of that, would DeadHappy kind of outline a specific demographic that you would be targeting, or because literally everyone has to face two inevitable things in life, one of them being our death, is everybody basically part of your sort of target audience and demographic? Would you? I hate to put it in that kind of crass term,
No,
but
it's fine. It's
that's what it
fine. No, I
comes
get.
down to.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. At the moment, so this is the kind of mild schizophrenia we've got in terms of products. So we've got life insurance, and life insurance is by nature, you will only get insured unless you pay a lot of money for full term or full life insurance. You're not really, well, with us actually, you're not going to get life insurance after the age of 60. So it brings that age down a little bit. It's a lot cheaper the younger you are, obviously, because of health issues. So, and because we do a lot of advertising on Facebook, there is a certain demographic, a sweet spot that is probably between 24 and 44. But we go from 18 to 60. I get a bit annoyed sometimes talking about demographics in terms of planning marketing. So I think the humor side of things and the personality in the brand isn't just about young people and getting young people to get life insurance. I think it's a mindset. And if you get that
Yes.
mindset, if you connect with that mindset of people that want to be empowered, that want to have a bit of, that want a bit of joy in planning, then that's what we're trying to aim for. So at the moment, because of life insurance and because we're making it's mobile first, it's very accessible. You don't have to go through prolonged paperwork and use IFAs and brokers beyond us. We're just making it really, really simple. So that, and I guess because we're new, there are some older people that trust the bigger, more established brands. So it probably lowers the demographic to a certain extent because of all of those components. But as the wills come in more and more, and as the other services come in more, and as we grow with our audience, I can see that demographic getting a little bit older. But at the moment, the sweet spot is probably early 30s, early to mid 30s, because there's a lot of people are getting their first property, having their first kid, that feel that they need or want life insurance. But when it becomes afterlife planning, then that blows the doors off the demographic a bit more.
Yeah, that all makes complete sense. And I think you were talking about mindset as opposed to a specific age group within a demographic there. And I personally, I think DeadHappy's no bullshit approach is hugely refreshing and would probably open up your appeal to such a broad range, because it is about mindset, and nobody's a fan of bullshit. So I imagine that is a really promising prospect. But is the no bullshit approach something that you have to work at developing, or is it more a case of just not building any bullshit into the language that you speak as a brand and as a company, and the content that you then share on behalf of DeadHappy?
Yeah, this comes from the founders. So anyone that
Yeah.
joins DeadHappy, we've got our own internal values, of which some of them are family first, give a shit, you're not a fucking child, and that's not meant in a patronizing sense at all. It's actually about empowering people and less hierarchy. There's all sorts of good things happening in terms of the culture, but it comes down to this DNA. No bullshit, transparency, honesty is how we operate as a business, as a group of people. So it's not something we have to try hard to achieve. And when it comes to copywriting or making the product more streamlined, And let's be honest, a big part of our values is empathy. So empathize, talk people's language, empathize with their state of being, whether it's their milestones in life, or if people are pissed, we're all pissed off with the world. We're all pissed off with politics, with, in a big way. The pandemic, there are so many frustrations we've had in the last few days, haven't we, with MPs and things. There's so many things we're angry about, and that's so clearly wrong. That why not tap into that? And it's not just from a cynical commercial point of view. It's because we're real people as well, and we're pissed off about those things as well. So if we can get the most streamlined products without the bullshit, make it accessible to more people, cut through this kind of inaccessible bureaucracy that involves in insurance and life insurance in particular. We've got our manifesto there. We've got a kind of manifesto for change in our thrust. So it's really not difficult to wake up in the morning and know that we can behave like that. It's a very free, it's a very liberating place to work, actually, because we don't feel constrained. Other than FCA, we've got to be careful that we don't do anything really offensive or misleading. But in terms of provocation and personality, it's really free. So it's not difficult at all to follow that no bullshit mantra.
Yeah. And I imagine, you just touched briefly on it there. It must be liberating, but it must also be a fun process, I imagine. And thinking about sharing the overall message, taking the bullshit out of everything, the brand voice, the DNA and personality that we've been talking about. You mentioned them earlier, Mick and Tell, the characters from your animated ads, which I really think they've got the personality of comedy shorts. It's honestly rare that I laugh at advertising out loud, and I definitely have been laughing at your content in the best way. Sometimes we laugh at content that does not mean to be funny because it's so appallingly bad. But do you have a personal favourite as head of brand in terms of a favourite medium, let's say, for engaging your audience and potential customer base as a brand?
My personal favourite is, as you said, the comedy shorts. It's having 2.5 minutes, 2 to 2.5 minutes to actually create a mini episode.
Yeah.
There's a guy, I have to give a shout out to a guy called Johnny Lang Studios, who helps us create those. He does the voices, the animation, the edits. So we work really closely with him to create Mick and Tell. And I just love them. And actually, the less selling we do, the more successful some of those shorts are. We do have to kind of shoehorn some sales messages in there, but I love those. They're like mini. In fact, we get loads of people telling us, writing to us and saying that they should have their own Netflix series, which is like the ultimate compliment. But I adore Mick and Tell. I think they're really useful in terms of getting some of our messages across. But forgetting all of that, they make me laugh. They make the guy that creates them laugh. He as he's making the scripts and creating the audio, he's laughing to himself. The amount of outtakes we've got. It's just, and I think it's really, the important point is we're there to entertain as well. And I think to get that engagement, let's entertain as well as get our selling across. And I think, but yeah, my favourite, it is Mick and Tell. We've got some really, really interesting ideas for disruptive PR, stunts, that kind of stuff, which can be really hard hitting, which really excite me as well.
Yeah.
On a day-to-day basis, week to week, Mick and Tell. In fact, I've literally just completed an induction with a new guy that's joined the team. He's one of the tech guys. And I said, how did you come across DeadHappy? And he said, I was a recruiter called me up and said, these guys are looking for somebody. Have you heard of them? And he burst out laughing because he just watched a Mick and Tell video on Facebook. And he said, I absolutely love them. So this
awesome.
is one of the tech guys that's just joined us. So yeah, Mick and Tell, I absolutely adore. And those comedy shorts, yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that they're your favourite, because they're certainly mine. Just let the audience know, where can they find that content? Because I think just for the sake of entertainment, they're going to enjoy it. So where can people find Mick and Tell?
They're all on the soon to be on the website. But if you search up DeadHappy on YouTube, you'll find all of the TV ads, the Facebook episodes. We've just done a brilliant, I think it's brilliant, Halloween trick or treat.
Yes, we loved that one at Paradise. Yeah, it's brilliant.
Which is distributing sweets from a treat master and 3,000 gun. So yeah, they're all on that. Search up DeadHappy on YouTube, you'll find them all there.
Okay, brilliant. Everybody's in for an entertaining treat, I can promise that. I can't believe it. We're coming up to my final question for you, Eddy. It's been such a pleasure talking to you today. This is a bit of a bigger picture one, which is I'd love to know, in your position within DeadHappy, if you think we're ready as an audience, as the public, as the consumer, however you want to think of us. Are we ready to talk about death and getting our shit together when it comes to life insurance?
Some are, some aren't. I think a lot of people are more than ready. I think a lot of younger people are finding different ways. I mean, you see this horrible term, but the death space. I mean, you've got a podcast called Griefcast. You've got a lot of people just genuinely interested in death, what happens after death. So I think, again, not just young, but anybody, I think there's a huge appetite for just being really clear and honest and having that debate. So it's a bit of both. I mean, if I'm being honest, I think a lot of people are ready for it. I think probably more aren't ready in this country, or in this kind of Western society, if you like. But more and more people are opening up to it, and we'll just help that along. But as I said, we start small. We'll help the narrative. There'll be a lot of other insurance companies that will end up doing. We're already seeing it. People copying some of the personality, the tone of voice. So that's not a massive problem if other people want to dive in. It will help that narrative change. But I think a lot of people aren't ready for it. But we can't worry too much about them. I think as a society, we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it feels like it. I think we're just more open in general to having these healthy conversations. Well, Eddy, thank you so much. I want to thank my guest, Eddy Edwards, Head of Brand at DeadHappy, for joining me on today's episode of Paradise Talks. It's really been enlightening and interesting. I've been Emma Bartholomew, and we'll be back soon with more creative industry insiders.
To discover more about the agency and Paradise Talks, visit www.paradise.london.